the Underrated and Overlooked podcast. Got a lot to get into today. First, we'll be obviously talking about the latest coaching changes with potential new hire tonight. And obviously, we'll recap Savannah Country Day's new hire as well. And then we'll get into some college football, latest around spring games, Clemson, Auburn. And then obviously, we'll get into the ones upcoming this weekend, which will include Georgia and their G Day and the top prospects and people we should be watching for. And then we'll get into some NFL, the biggest trade from last week, and Tavondre Sweat's unfortunate arrest. We'll talk about all that. But Greg, how you feeling today?
Feeling good. Let's get into it.
All right, let's do it. So, Greg, I want you to start it up for us. Just go ahead and kind of get into kind of what was your impressions? You interviewed him. I thought it was a stellar interview you had with Coach Travis Rowland of Camden County. What was your just impression of that direction of that program and what he's going to bring in 2024?
I think with Coach Rowland, the most incredible part is what he was able to do at Mainland. As a player, just looking back on it, had 197 tackles, led them to the first ever state title as a player. Goes through the coaching ranks, takes another job in Florida, goes back to Mainland, leads them to the state title this last season. It was a thrilling game. They won on a last-second field goal, crazy playoff run. And really, when you look back at it, he had no clue that he was going to end up at Camden County after that game. He had no clue he was going to end up there during the playoff run. But that position opened up. He said when it opened up, he realized it is one of the best positions in the entire country. He applied. He was over 30 names that were on the finalist list. And then when it was announced, he obviously accepted it because it's a big deal. He's been in Daytona his entire life. That's where he played. That's where he coached. But that's just how big of an opportunity it is. And so that's someone that has checked off the championship box as a player, as a coach, and now he's getting to really take over one of the biggest jobs and opportunities in the country. And I think with the facilities, it's a situation where these Florida coaches will say, man, I want to go to a program where we have the nutrition, we have the facilities to have these types of workouts. We have this state-of-the-art treadmills, these systems. Well, that's already been in place at Camden. So that's a well-oiled machine. Now he gets to bring his staff in and take advantage of it. They're students of the game. They kill it at the coaching clinics. And I think he's going to be there for the long run. And it is really exciting.
And then do you think some of the talent, like obviously when you have a new coach, you'll see some of the talent kind of go out. Do you foresee any of the talent they have potentially leaving, or do you think they'll stay?
I think they're going to stay. He was a home run hire. I had a feeling they were going to take someone from out of state because it always attracts state championship coaches. Like typically when, just look at Colquitt County back in the day, they attracted Rush Probst, Lowndes, they brought in guys. But another thing, if you look at the interview, he was talking about some of the coaches that he went up against when he was in Florida that are now in the state of Georgia, state championship coaches, and guys he actually worked with. Mark Reach at Lambert, what a job he did just 2 years now, but he's turned them into a powerhouse. You had Coach Paxia, he's now at Winder Barrow. So I think he's going to bring something unique to it, but it really did feel like there was a sense of closure on what he accomplished in Florida, where it was just the right time for him, and it all seemed to work out.
No doubt about it. And you guys, if you're watching, definitely go back and go watch that interview. Created an outstanding job. He also interviewed Morgan County's head coach as well. So, I mean, it was an outstanding interview with both. Was really blown away by the interview. And can't wait to see what he does with Camden County. I think, as Craig mentioned, they did a good job just, getting out of state, getting a top guy and then bringing it into the program. And a team has been on the cusp. Like they went into I believe it was the semifinals this year and played against Walton. Just been a stellar team all year and is loaded with talent.
Yes, and so obviously he went there in mid-March, so this isn't necessarily a full offseason, but last year's Camden County team was very young. They played a ton of football games, obviously. They got to play 14, so that's huge for their experience. They have Elias Williams. He had a great year. Coach Rowland's used to coaching five stars, but this is a unique player. I think with Elias, he's so versatile. How will he be used offensively? Obviously, he can get in there defensively as well. But Coach Rowland was saying off the bat, he sees that he's just a humble kid. He didn't go up to him and say, "Hey, coach, like, how are you going to use me?" Blah, blah, blah. He just introduced himself and wanted to get to work and help the team. I think Camden, when you look at their schedule, they're going to play four Florida teams. And then I think they ended up having 5 region games, but it's going to be 1 Georgia game, 4 Florida teams. That schedule was already made before Coach Rowland got there. And then they're going to get into that region. And I think the primary goal for them is to get that home field. That is a very tough place to play. And after the school had to take 4 trips up to Atlanta last year, I think that'll be extremely motivating for them. And I think they can earn a 1 or 2 seed in Rowland's first year. 7A or 6A is absolutely loaded. Maybe they don't get it done this year, but I think this is going to be a very exciting football season for Coach Rowland. I'm excited to see him get his first taste of Georgia football at one of the best programs, and he has earned every bit of this opportunity.
No doubt. Now, obviously, this is not on our topics list, but I do want you to kind of expound on that, Craig. Do you think this year's 6A is as loaded as 7A was last year?
I think it's even more loaded. Last year, I really felt like it was just centered around Walton because they had this super team. It was their year to lose it. The year before, you had a team like Carrollton with a freshman quarterback make it to the finals. Mill Creek broke through. They ended up peaking at the right time, became unstoppable. But really, besides Walton, they never got challenged until the Camden County game. On the other side of the bracket, you had Colquitt, Milton, and Grayson, but then other teams kind of faded out at the end. North Cobb fell off. I'm trying to think who else was in that. Buford just never had – I don't think they ever played their best game. It really was about 4 teams. This year, when you go down the list, teams that, let's just say, could potentially upset or beat Camden County in the playoffs, you put Grayson up there. You obviously have to have Colquitt County. I think North Gwinnett has a chance to go toe-to-toe with them. Buford's obviously going to be the real deal this year. So, say slightly, but it seems to be pretty wide open.
Okay. All right. Got you.
Peachtree Ridge, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of sleepers too.
Yeah, I'm just going to get into that. Our sleepers list. Can't wait to see what's on your radar as well for that, Craig. And appreciate you expounding on that a little bit. I think it's going to be another interesting classification this year in 6A. Will be very entertaining. But we have more coaching changes as well. We're going to get into Savannah Country Day. They officially hired their new head coach, and we'll talk about Spalding here in just a second. But they officially hired Rock Batten, former Vanderbilt player. He's been a head coach for 13 seasons in the Nashville area. Coach Insworth for 5 years and 8 at Battleground Academy. Led Battleground to a 2016 state championship. And he's going to replace John Mooring, who is now at Wayne County.
Yeah, so the fact that Savannah Country Day's former coach is now at Wayne County, it shows he did not get fired. He got no disrespect to them, but Wayne County is one of the best jobs. It's a great opportunity for him. This is the stat I want to point out about last year's Savannah Country Day team because it was without question the best football season for all of the Savannah area. And that's because Calvary Day and Savannah Christian, they had great seasons last year. They returned all their guys. And then obviously both ended up falling to Cedar Grove in the playoffs late. But Savannah Country Day against the 2 powerhouses in the region, Savannah Christian and Calvary Day, they got shut out in both those games. 35-0, 49-0. So that's 84-0. Despite 0 points in those 2 games, they had the highest scoring offense they've ever had in school history, 35 points per game. So when you get shut out in 2 of your games and still set a school record for offense, I think they just weren't on the level of the top tier, but they still obviously were doing the right thing. Outside of those games, they were putting up massive numbers. That would have averaged out, even if they had just 20 points that game, they would have been a 40-point-per-game team. They ended up falling by 1 point in the first round to Upson Lee. So I think playing those powerhouses the last few years, that's going to help them out. But also getting another state championship coach from another state, I think it's going to be a fresh turnaround for them.
No doubt about it. I think it will too. And as you mentioned, their head coach leaving, but as you said, going to a great opportunity with Wayne County and that loaded region that they're going to have this upcoming season as well. But yeah, I can't wait to see what he's able to do with their program. Obviously, he's had some success at Tennessee, being able to win the state title there with Battleground. So can't wait to see what he brings to the table. And Savannah Country Day finished 7-4 last year. So it'll be interesting to see what they're able to do this year.
Yep, and they'll be returning. It's Barton Mixon, their quarterback. He was All-State honorable mention last year as a junior.
All right. Interesting there. And then obviously we got one to show you guys. Craig pointed this one out, so we won't waste any more time. This is by Horace Shivers out there in Griffin. But they are set to hire a new coach. Not confirmed yet, but show you guys real quick. So as you can see via his tweet, breaking, there's a strong possibility that Spalding High will name their new head football coach tonight. I know obviously Georgia High School Football Daily's been reporting on this as well. Obviously, we know what happened. Unfortunately, had a really good year last year, Craig. The coach ended up being charged with, murder, unfortunately. But now they look to move on to a new regime. Who do you think would be a great hire for this program?
Well, I wish that tweet, obviously that's the finalists for their coaching staff right now. I think the article speculated they were going to go out of state. Is that right? Let me see. I have it pulled up. All right. It says Spalding, coming off its first region title in 20 years, will have a new coach Tuesday evening pending approval. The candidate has not been announced publicly, but is expected to be a current head coach. So that's interesting. So that's what it was. So yeah, we might see someone move from another nearby school. So, I mean, Spalding obviously is a great place. Yeah. Coach Kearney did a phenomenal job. He was the reigning coach of the year. So this is a big hire. They want to make sure they get it right and not lose momentum from what they've been building down there.
No doubt about it. So hopefully he'll be able to come in. I think, like you said, they'll be loaded with talent again. But, obviously they'll be moving in a new direction. But as you said, coach, whoever they hire is going into a great situation and a great program. It's definitely on the rise. So be interesting to see. But I'm sure Craig's tomorrow show is at Wednesday. So I'm sure Craig will be reacting officially when they do the hire, if they do it tonight. So.
Yep. And I'm trying to think who would. I think it would be someone in that vicinity that maybe Spalding's been playing year after year that has beaten them. The fact that they want to get another head coach, I think we might see them poach someone from a nearby school in that area.
No doubt about it. No doubt. So we'll keep you guys posted there. We'll have obviously the reaction to it probably tomorrow on Craig's show. So keep it locked for there at noon Eastern. Be a drive for the GSSA state title, so that would be really intriguing to see. But before we move on, Craig, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Nope, that is it.
All right, so we'll move on to our next topic for high school before we get into our college segment. But I wanted to bring up this topic. I think it's going to be interesting for us to debate a little bit, maybe put each other up on game a little bit. But biggest sleepers, Craig, headed into spring football, spring practice in 2024.
Okay, so starting in class 6A.
Yep.
All right, hold up. The biggest sleepers. I want to make sure I get my classifications right. And I want to make sure we're talking about real sleepers, not these not these other guys. All right. I think I'm going to go with Wheeler as one.
That's a good one.
They have a lot of confidence in their guys. Got some players that are blowing up. They've increased their win totals the last consecutive seasons. They've got Coach Love, Westlake's former coach. So watch out for them. They might be a really strong team. That'll be my first one.
All right, mine, I'm going to go with South Paulding. Obviously, Craig had him on this show, but I think with the direction that they're going with Coach Allen, some of the prospects, Jay Sanker, obviously had to go with Kate Whittington. I think he's primed for a stellar year. Young, only a sophomore, but I think he is moving in the right direction. I think he can put a lot of people on notice with his play. Obviously, South Paulding had a good year a couple of years ago, made the playoffs, made a nice little run. But I think this year they have the team and they're going to make some noise. And they're going to be a team I think that's slept on. Not a lot of people want to talk about South Paulding, but when they come and have a pretty good season, I think a lot of people will be surprised.
All right, I'm going to go 2 this time. I'm going to go with Troop.
Okay,
I think last year they lose their quarterback, but you look at some of their dudes, I think they're going to be very good this year. And then a team that they're actually going to, I think, scrimmage against, I think Noonan is going to be very successful this year. They had to battle in that region last year with South Paulding, Hughes, Douglas County, Alexander. But they're in a brand new region. I think it's more favorable. And just talking to Coach Walker, I think they're pretty confident in this group defensively and just where they're at speed-wise.
No doubt. I think for me, it's 2. Craig, you mentioned him earlier. That might be one of your sleepers, but I got to go Peachtree Ridge. I think what they did last year was great, 1-10 wins, first time since 2019. But they're in a tough classification. So as Craig mentioned, they're not going to get a lot of the love, right? It's going to be Carrollton, Douglas County, Westlake, Beaufort, Grayson. A lot of people are probably going to think about those teams before they think about Peachtree Ridge. So I got them as a sleeper again. I know last year they won 10 games. I think Darnell Kelly takes a big step forward this upcoming year, puts a lot more people on notice that aren't. And I think with Darian Barney and some of that talent they got, obviously at the receiving corps, I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. So they would be my other sleeper.
All right. Next one, I just think they're on the rise, New Hampstead. They're going to be in a really difficult region, but what they did last year, they played every single team competitively. They've been balling out the last few seasons, high-powered offense. Coach Hockman's doing a great job. I think they're a team that can make the playoffs out of one of the most challenging regions anywhere in the state in Class 4A. But I really like what they've been doing.
Like that one. Okay, next one for me has to be Sprayberry. A lot of people aren't talking about them, but they got one of the top players in the country at the defensive or at the cornerback spot, defensive back. Jordan Edmonds. I think he's going to have a lot to say this year, but sleeper guy would be the quarterback, Jaden Duckett. Not a lot of people are talking about him, but if he could take a step forward in terms of progression and being able to throw the ball and kind of take, because he's a next level athlete already, but if he could take a next step with just his accuracy, going through his progressions and get even better, I think they could be a team that a lot of people will be surprised seeing how good they could potentially be. But my next one would be Sprayberry.
All right, I'm going to go with the guy I had on the show Friday, Morgan County. They started 2 freshman quarterbacks last year. They both rotated snaps evenly. They've got their leading receiver returning, got a lot of depth in the backfield, and they're moving down from Class 3A to, I believe it's Class A Division 1 or Class 2A. Just looking at their region, they were a top 10 team last year. In Class 3A, they got overshadowed by the Calvary Days and Cedar Groves, but I think they will be able to rise into the top 5 probably initially off the bat into the season. And this is year 4 for Quentin Jenkins. So these seniors will be guys that he has gotten to coach up since they arrived on campus.
No doubt. Next for me, I'm going to go Dutchtown. I like what they've been able to do last couple of seasons. They've just been falling a little short, but I think this year they got a little bit more talent. You look at the receiving corps, the DB room, and I really like what Aiden Kane can potentially bring to the team. So he's kind of like my underrated prospect. Just picked up a Duke offer, has started to kind of blow up in recruiting. But I think Dutchtown has a bounce back year this year, could surprise a lot of folks.
All right. I don't know if they're doing spring practice, but a team that we both agree has been slept on, I think Blessed Trinity. They were very solid last year, and if you look at that, they came up real close to Marist. They did lose to Roswell, but I think Roswell lost a lot from last year's team. BT returned some pretty key pieces.
Yes, they did.
It's year 2 for that staff. I think they have a chance to be very good. And then you look at how they started last year. They opened their season with a bang against Calhoun, getting that big victory.
Yes, they did. And they have a pretty favorable region. Obviously, it'll still be tough, but they're in the same region with Cambridge, Centennial, Cale, Westminster. So they definitely have a potential chance to make the playoffs. I can't wait to see the next step. As you mentioned, they're loaded with talent, bringing everybody back. What step forward does Brooks Goodman take? And what's kind of crazy too, Craig, watch some of his videos lately. He's gotten a lot bigger. Definitely has yoked up a little bit, so you can tell he's training a lot. But what step forward can he take? Will they allow him to throw the ball more? And then the next prospect is obviously DJ Jacobs, who's getting a lot of buzz and noise. 2027 class, very highly rated on him. And then, like you said, the receiving corps. Bryce Lewis recently just decommitted from Arizona. Commitment is back open, 6'6", 205, Craig. I mean, that's the guy you just throw the ball up to. He's going to go get it. Good at tracking the football. And then they got Zion McKenzie out of the slot. So, as you said, this should be a year that they take that next step forward.
Yeah, I mean, Brooks is the real deal. Yep. The thing about BT, and I think the same is going to be true this year, it's like their team that's going to run off the clock. They're going to want to have long, sustained drives. So you are going to see him not try to make the fatal mistakes, protect the football. However, they do have to add some more explosiveness to that offense.
Yes.
Because they don't necessarily have a size advantage over some of those big fronts. They're going to get tested when they play Milton this season. That'll be a really big test. And so when you're playing them, you've got to allow him to be aggressive and spread that defense out. So we'll definitely see it.
Yeah, that was a good one, Craig. My next one is going to be Jonesboro, the boys out there, out there in Clayton County. I like what they can potentially be. They added another piece in the secondary, Craig, to go along with Cortez Redding, John Tavis, Wyman. The receiver corps is deep. Question will be, can the quarterback get these guys the ball in space? Because they're loaded at running back, they're loaded at receiver. We talked about Cortez. We talked about Tavis Wyman. They got a great linebacker / edge in Jeremiah Tickett. They just got dudes all over the field, man. So this year, my question, can they put it together, Craig? They got the talent, got the coaching, but that's one of my sleepers. And they're in 4A this year, so they got a little bit of a better opportunity to compete and go far.
Very true. I got two. One, it's going to be Providence Christian with Coach Russ. Last year, they surpassed 2 wins for the first time ever. They actually made the playoffs, had a historic season. And then Mount Vernon, bringing in Terrence Edwards. He was at Milton last year, coaching up the receivers. This is his first head coaching job. Mount Vernon is very invested. And then I forgot his name, but we saw one of their slot receivers, a young guy in the Georgia Elite Classic that was just making tons of plays. He was running the ball. He was catching in the red zone. He was breaking tackles, just kind of that smaller slot receiver. So they definitely have some dangerous pieces.
Yes, they do. My last two as well, Craig. Southwest DeKalb, obviously, I had their coach on my show a few weeks ago. Wrote an article about them. I just think speed kills. Obviously, when you got guys and playmakers that can do a whole bunch of different things, that bodes well in your favor. Brandon Gunn, Sam Turner. They got their quarterback return. Their running back room is deep. I think this is a team that can take a big step forward in that classification they're in. And I think a lot of people are not going to be like, oh, Southwest DeKalb, they went 2-8 last year or whatever. I think Coach Bell is going to have that group ready to go, and I think they're going to be a potent team and a team that's going to be putting up a lot of points. So I got them as my other sleeper. And my last one, Frederick Douglass. Haven't mentioned them, but with Jonte Gilbert, I just want to see, can they have – because a lot of people are going to double him on offense. A lot of people are going to not want to throw to his side of where he's at. Can they have a couple more players come in and step up big to go along with Jonte, who's an exceptional athlete, expected to narrow down his list here pretty soon to a top 5, but a guy that's potent, great on both sides of the ball. But can they have other pieces to help him out?
For sure. I got one more.
Okay.
Cambridge.
Go ahead. Give us the intel on that, Craig.
Head coach Tyler Jones, Walton's former OC. I think people that are sleeping on Cambridge this year don't do it.
Yeah, that guy is an offensive mastermind. I mean, when you just talk to him and his knowledge of the game and how he approaches different things and the level that he had that Walton offense. And I'll say this real quick before we move on. Again, guys, go back and look at Walton. Tell me what player on that field did they have that was a 4-star, 5-star player at the receiving corps? All they had was 3-star. Technically, all they had was 3-star tight end who was Hunter Till, right? And Jeremy. They did not have anybody else that was. They did not have a CJ Wiley. They did not have gosh, why am I losing receiver names right now? They did not have a Travis Smith, right? These are guys. I'm not saying they couldn't play. All those guys can play. I'm just saying he did more with less, and made those guys really, really special in that offense. And they were dynamic. And what was so cool, Jeremy spread the ball around. It's going to be the same thing when they come in now. They have a new quarterback now coming in for Cambridge, and they're going to have the weapons. Don't question weapons. They're going to have Tyler Blaylock, did the film breakdown on him. They're going to have Hudson Kuchera, and they're also going to have Craig Dandridge. So they're going to have plenty of weapons. As Craig said, don't sleep on them.
Yep. And just another point. I mean, Walton was loaded, but they did have injuries offensively. Yep. They didn't skip a beat. And then just how they were able to spread the ball out, the creativity, the preparedness, always having a situation, knowing how to run the clock. steal possessions, and we cannot forget that Walton offense had a perfect game against Carrollton. 10 possessions, 10 touchdowns.
How many times do you see that in the game, Craig?
Never seen that.
No doubt about it. But Craig, before we move on, did you have anything else you want to hit before we bring in on
that's
Hayden?
It.
All right. So, guys, give us 1 sec. We're going to bring Hayden on. Go ahead and get prepped real quick. Get that to Craig. All right. Let's see. All right. Bear with us, y'all. All right, there we go. We are connected. So, guys, as you know, we just moved to our second segment, which is college football. It's been a busy week of college football. As you guys know, the spring games are here, so we're going to dive into those. But we're going to bring on Hayden. Actually, we're going to react to the biggest commitment today. So let's actually bring up the graphic before we bring Hayden on and get his reaction of what he thinks as well. Hold on 1 sec, y'all. All right, so here's the graphic. Let's share screen. All right, there it is. And then let's bring Hayden on. There we go. What's going on, Hayden?
Not much. How y'all guys doing?
We're doing good. Appreciate you coming on, man. So we want you to react to obviously some of the biggest news, man. Mason Short officially committed to Georgia. I think we felt pretty good about that. But what's your reaction to that, Hayden?
It's a huge commitment. After a few weeks of bad news, minus Jared Curtis, Georgia's getting a really good interior offensive line from the Augusta area. I say interior offensive line. I think that's sort of a question mark. He has the ability to be both a interior or exterior offensive lineman. It's really a high-end position that I think Georgia really needed, considering he's the first offensive line commit this cycle.
No doubt, and I think the thing that stands out about Georgia is what Kirby Smart did. Obviously, if you remember, towards late December, early January, I just remember him going out when they had that contact period. They could officially start, going to go see recruits. I just remember him, flying with his helicopter, going to go see him officially. And then obviously after Nick Saban retired, him decommitting, he was hot on his trail. So what would you just say to that of what Kirby Smart did in landing this recruitment and kind of going all out and not stopping even when he had committed to Alabama?
I think it shows that Kirby Smart and the Georgia recruiting staff keep doing what they've done since Kirby Smart's got there. It's just because a player commits does not mean that they're done recruiting them. They recruit these players until the very end. And I mean, we've seen it multiple times with KJ Bolden, who was committed to FSU and flipped in the last minute to come to Georgia. Multiple quarterbacks have been committed elsewhere and then decide to flip their commitment to Georgia. I think it just continues to show the amount of work that this recruiting staff puts in.
No doubt.
All right, I got a question, Hayden. So with Mason Short, I'm looking back at the 2022 Georgia Elite. He was in our game as a sophomore. He played offensive tackle. Early at Evans, I feel like when you're the best offensive lineman, it's more valuable to have you kind of as the anchor on the edge, make sure no one's trying to get past you, busting up the plays. But don't you think that at the next level, he probably does project to be that interior lineman, that power blocker? He's great in the shot put. He's absolutely massive, but I think I like him more at the guard position.
I definitely like him more at the guard position. The only question mark is that Georgia's played multiple players that at the next level are guards, like Jamari Salyer, their entire career as tackles. So, I mean, I think he's a much better interior lineman if you're for pass pro, but if you're looking to dominate in the run game, it may help to put him at offensive tackle at times.
That's a fair point, because I was coming at it from the perspective of the only reason he was playing tackle in high school is because that's where the team needed him. But I felt like just with his power, it's like he's a solid wall in that middle of the interior. But no, it's a great point. Run games are evolving, and he could definitely contribute at both. So that'll be interesting. But I mean, he's definitely a guy that I see an immediate Power 5 starter.
I completely agree. He's 6'5.5". He weighs 305, but all of that weight's good weight. It's not like a lot of the guys that Georgia has been getting that are, even taller than him at 6'7", 6'8", but in the mid 300s, even pushing 400 pounds. I think he can come in and at least be a rotational player in year one, and by year two and definitely year three, he's a Power 5 SEC caliber starter.
And have you gotten an opportunity to just see any of his film? Because exactly what Coach Cyril's and George is looking for in their prospects. They want guys that play through the whistle and are going to pancake players, and he's just been doing that. It seems like for the last 5 years, but he'll be a senior now.
Yeah, I've watched a good bit of his film. He's one of the most dominant offensive linemen in the state as of in recent years, and he's been doing it, as you said, his entire career. Of course, he didn't just hit a growth spurt. He's been massive his entire career. He reminds me, not to the extent of Ben Cleveland, but that in his size, but as someone that came into high school already a massive human being.
That is such a great comparison. And what do you think that's like, though, when you are the biggest player on the field pretty much every game? I mean, the confidence that this kid has, just being that big early in his career, being out on the field, having always just had that physical dominance. How ready do you think he'll be to get up there and actually go toe-to-toe with some other, obviously, incredible linemen?
I think he's pretty ready and pretty polished for a high school offensive lineman. Just because he's been the most dominant offensive lineman his entire career does not mean that he's still worked on his craft. He's become a very polished run blocker and has grown a lot as a pass blocker.
Yep. And have you heard, is he going to be in Athens this week for the spring game?
I actually do not know whether he's going to be there or not. I would assume he would, considering that he's committed, but there's all kinds of spring games, and Georgia's, unlike some schools like Clemson, allows players to still make official visits and unofficial visits to other schools.
That's a good point. And then Hayden, who do you think is next potential, or who is the next targets for the Bulldogs in this 25 cycle after landing another commitment?
I think right now, it has to be, you have to look at quarterback, and I think they're going to really make a push for either Ryan Montgomery or to try to flip Juju Lewis.
Who, if you had to say you had to pick one, who do you think fits their scheme better potentially in the future? Do you think it's Montgomery or do you think it's Juju?
I don't think it really matters. I think Georgia is willing to change their scheme a little bit. I think they play very much we're going to get the best players we possibly can, and we're going to build an offense around them, not put them into our offense.
That's a good point. Okay, and then real quick, obviously, we didn't put it on the list, but who do you think defensively could be another target for them, or potentially they can get hard? Obviously, they've been getting a lot of guys that crystal ball there. I know you've probably seen that, but who do you think is the next defensive guy they could probably land?
I think they're going to push really hard in the coming weeks for Elijah Griffin, and another person on that defensive line, Darren Ikebana from Hillside, New Jersey, is someone that it looks like they're pushing really hard for. He's a either edge rusher or defensive lineman. He's from Nigeria. He's really raw, but could play anywhere from outside linebacker to maybe even interior defensive lineman.
Interesting. All right, so this class so far, looking at these commits, some absolute ballers. Elias Williams, you got Ethan Barber, so that's 2 tight ends. You're talking about getting Elijah, but where are the receivers in this 2025 class?
I think that's one of the positions they really need to push right now. Travis Smith out of Westlake is someone that it seems like they're pushing really hard to get. Right now, I think he's crystal balled to Georgia on most sites, and I think Georgia is the leader for him right now. Another big name at wide receiver is Cameron Sparks out of the Baylor School in Tennessee. He's another big wide receiver that they're trying to get.
I think too, Craig, you throw in there CJ Wiley will be another one. Like if they can't land Travis, I think CJ would be high on their list as well, in addition to what Hayden mentioned with Cameron Sparks. But I think with Travis, I'm going to be honest with y'all, what I've been hearing, obviously this is not confirmed. These are just rumors, but I think if they land the recruitment of Juju, I think that is a pretty close cut deal for Travis Smith. He's already talked very highly of him and how much you want to play on the next level. I think that would be clear cut, pretty much done if they land Juju.
For sure. And then here's a question about the receivers. Do you see them trying to get a wide receiver one and then some other guys, or do you think they will just take the approach where they just try to get like a group of guys that they're going to have to battle out for it? Do you see the need for them to really get a superstar?
I think Georgia's going to continue to do what they've done the entire Kirby Smart era, and that it's going to be just like the running back room, wide receiver by committee, even though, I mean, they've had some really good wide receivers, especially in the last 2 years with, I mean, Brock Bowers is a tight end, but played outside a lot. Savannah Country is being projected as a late first, early second rounder. A.D. Mitchell that transferred to Tennessee or Texas last year. He's now projected to be almost a lock to be a mid to late first rounder. I think they're going to look to get high upside guys and some that they can develop into great players, but it's going to be, I don't think you're ever going to see Georgia have a guy that's going to go for 1,000 yards.
And then, hey, I have a question. We're going to talk about it later, but the Clemson spring game was this last week. Obviously, Georgia's going to play them. After seeing Clemson, what do you think stands out in that particular matchup?
I really thought it was how well the defense played and how well some of the players from Georgia, like Jamal Anderson Jr., played really well. He had a pick six in that game. I thought the defense, I think they had multiple interceptions and maybe multiple pick sixes. I think the defense just played really well. It's going to be interesting to see them play against an offense in Georgia to start the season that looks like it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, no, it is an interesting matchup. I thought like Clemson's secondary looked better than it has been. That's an intriguing matchup with Georgia replacing a lot of its receiving targets. But then on the other hand, it's like if Clemson's going to turn the ball over like that, they're going up against a heck of a secondary. I think that game convinced me that Clemson might be a little better than last year, but you look at the comment sections and my buddy I ran into at LA Fitness, he said it was going to be a bloodbath. I don't know about that, but man, it's an opportunity for Georgia to really pounce on them.
I think it's an opportunity for Georgia to make it Georgia to make a statement win, but also for Clemson to make a statement win. I mean, it's just spring. It's hard to take anything away from a spring game. If they can play well, it's a huge chance for Clemson to really make a statement win.
No doubt. And then we want to ask you obviously about the game today. Or not the game today, I'm sorry. The game this weekend, obviously the G-Day game. Who are you most excited to see? Like freshman prospects coming in. Obviously KJ Bolden hit on that list, but who are some prospects you're excited to see, or even just players that are coming into new roles this potential season that you want to see?
I'm actually really excited to see some of the freshman linebackers. Justin Williams and Chris Cole apparently came in and are two massive individuals that are very well developed to be true freshmen. And you could see them getting playing time pretty early in their careers. And then the other player that I'm kind of excited to see is I want to see how Gunnar Stockton plays in this probable backup role that he's in this coming year.
And do you think these spring games can provide momentum for the team, but especially for individuals heading into maybe their debut?
I think it definitely can give, especially some of the younger guys, confidence that haven't had starting time and been on that kind of stage before. When you look at it's for like quarterbacks and wide receivers, I think a good spring game sometimes it allows fans to know and then to know. I mean, a few years ago we saw Brock Bowers go off in Georgia's spring game, and that the year after and that season afterwards he had his freshman season that was his record-breaking freshman season that was the stepping stone for his entire career, now being one of the highest rated tight end prospects of all time.
Very true. And so this is a big month. Obviously, you got recruiting, the spring game, and then the draft. Do you see Georgia having the most successful April, or what other teams might be able to edge them this month?
I think Georgia will have a successful April. I think some of the teams that you saw get new head coaches will have a really successful April, considering that we're about to get into the second transfer window, and some of these teams like Alabama, I think Arizona, and Washington all are going to be trying to add players to their teams in this second window, and I think that they may have more successful Aprils in that sense, and they may even have more successful first and second round drafts. But I think you're going to see at least 2 or 3 more players commit in this coming month.
And then I feel like last year it was Brock was the main attraction for UGA when he was on the field. Who do you think has the most star power on this year's team?
I think it's definitely Carson Beck. You have a guy that's projected to be one of the top 2 NFL draft picks at quarterback next year. And I think that's the first time in God knows how long since Georgia's really had a guy like that.
Very true. And then what do you see just the split between him and Gunner in the spring game? Do you think this is more important to get Gunner reps, or maybe it will actually end up being 50-50?
I think it'll be closer to 50-50. I think getting Gunner reps is big because it's big in what it shows that he's truly taken over that backup position and that he's growing into that and to be the probable starter in 2025. I'm as high on Gunner Stockton as anybody, and I think this will be a true show of how far he's come.
What do you like most about him? Is it just his accuracy, competitiveness, arm? Obviously, we all saw him play in high school, but what do you think led to him just being a record setter in the state?
I think it's a mixture of he's a student of the game. He came out of Raven County very polished for a high school passer. He understands a lot of the minute details that it takes to be a high-level quarterback that you don't see a lot of in high school quarterbacks. And then it's also that he came in following a higher-rated guy in Brock Vandegrift that he committed not long after Brock did. And I think his exact statement was, I plan to graduate from the University of Georgia no matter what. I think that mentality of I'm going to come in and I'm going to fight for the job because I think I'm the best is really good for a quarterback. And I think it allows confidence in them and it builds confidence in the players around them.
Good point. Yeah, that's a commitment from him because obviously I could have gone to a lot of places. Georgia's had plenty of quarterbacks transfer out. So we'll see. I hope he has a good spring game, though. I really do. I think it will be good just for the storyline. And Georgia, it seems like every single year, no matter what, they have a quarterback conversation. I don't see a controversy this year, but someone's going to talk.
I like that.
Yeah, if it's like the first half, I think it was during that South Carolina game where people were starting to sweat last year.
Yes, they were. No doubt. But all right, Hayden, that's all we got for today. We appreciate you coming on, talking a little bit about Georgia. Obviously, we'll have you next week as well to kind of react to the spring game, get your thoughts, get your analysis, what stood out to you, and just the biggest takeaway. So we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, guys.
All right, guys. So there goes Hayden. There goes Hayden. Obviously, talking a little bit about Georgia. We'll have Max here joining in just a little bit to talk about Alabama, obviously, and the program. But before we bring him on, Craig, I just get your quick reaction. What's your thoughts on just, obviously their incredible basketball run, all the way to the Final Four and giving UConn a real battle?
I was disappointed to see them lose. It was kind of predictable. But I thought they played some of the most exciting brand of basketball, and it wasn't sloppy. I feel like that is what it took for them to have a chance, is to play at that blazing pace. It was a team with a lot of transfers that came together at the right time. So thought it was a huge success. It set the model, and now that they've broken through, gotten to the Final Four, I think Alabama's going to be very motivated to get back to it. And I don't think it's uncommon. You don't usually win it the first time.
It's very, very, very true. So, yeah, I mean, I love the run. Obviously, we're gonna break it down more when Max joins us, but yeah, man, I thought it was an incredible run. Shout out to Coach Nate Oats, and he obviously doubled down on staying with the program. So I think that's good for their future, and they got some great prospects coming in. Darion Reed, Aiden Sherrill, in the 24 class. We'll see what they do with the portal, but I think they're going to be a very, very good team, and they show what you need to kind of hang with a team like that. You need elite shot makers.
Yeah, their shooters were very exciting. That was some of the best basketball I've ever seen. Totally hyped up for it. But yeah, just a tough break. But UConn was clearly on a different level.
No doubt. But without further ado, guys, we're going to bring on Max to talk a little bit about Alabama basketball and football. Hold on, Max. All right. What's going on, Max? How are you?
How we doing, guys? Good to see y'all.
Good to see you too, man.
Doing well.
Great, man. So how are you feeling, man, after that incredible run that Alabama had this past year? I mean, you guys did some great things, achieved some great success. Just what's your thoughts overall about the run?
They got to a point I never thought I'd see them go to be honest with you. And they got over the hump in the Elite Eight and they made it to the Final Four. And I think they definitely have the coach to take them to the next level. And Alabama basketball is becoming a powerhouse in college basketball. It should be for the near future.
Yeah, I think so too. I think especially with the coach doubling down, obviously yesterday and saying that he's not going anywhere. I think that bodes well. Obviously, got your commits coming in, Darion Reed and Aiden Sherrill. Be interested what kind of role they can carve out. But I think you guys are in a great spot. And just what's your reaction to the game against UConn? I mean, a competitive game. I thought you guys gave them the best test they had all year. But what's your reaction to that game?
Those guys from UConn are different. It does not look like a college basketball team whatsoever. Those guys are for real, all the way down from the 1 to the 5, from Caravan to Klingon to Newton to Stephon Castle to Cam Spencer, who had a huge game last night in the national championship. But just 1 through 5, all the way down, everyone does their job, and Hurley creates the plays for them all over the place. And it's not even necessarily the talent is there, but the coaching is off the charts for them, and they get their guys open so easily and so effortlessly. And it doesn't help that they're all stars as well.
No doubt. And then what did you thought about Alabama's performance in the game?
They did what they could. Honestly, I felt like they did what they could. They had it with, I think it was 44-40 at halftime. Had it close. I think Sears got a bucket and make it within 4. But, I mean, you got to give your credit to UConn. But the run from Alabama was incredible. And the shot making in that game especially was unlike anything I've ever seen. It's just a fast-paced, up-tempo game with Klingon running up and down the court, dunking everything that he gets his hands on, blocking everything he gets his hand on. He really just disrupts the game all over the place.
No doubt. Yeah, I was impressed with Sears. I mean, one of the plays that stand out to me is obviously when he came down court and he just hit it from nearly the logo. I mean, that was incredible. It just seemed like in that game, like every time UConn went on the run, you guys answered. Like you guys just never went away up into the end. Like the score is a little bit deceiving. The game was a lot closer than what the score indicates, but I was impressed with him. Obviously, Aaron Estrada, and also was impressed with Grant Nelson, who had 19. But I thought he did the best they could. But I think it's going to be obviously some great learning lessons for them. And whoever they're able to bring back, I mean, they showed kind of the blueprint of what you need. You got to have elite shot makers, guys that are not afraid to pull from deep and can score at a high level if you want to hang with UConn.
Yeah, for sure. And especially like how you said, guys, it will be interesting to see who comes back for Alabama, because I believe Sears is gone. But then from there are questions. Estrada's the only one I believe in terms of eligibility that has to go. But there's guys like Nelson and Rylan Griffin and Latrell Wrightsell and Nick Pringle. Make sure you got to all keep these guys back and keep the same formula going. For sure.
No doubt. And then I got one more, and I'll throw it to Craig. I think, too, Coach Oats has been doing a really good job of mixing both. I think, as you've been mentioning, some of the veterans in there, but also having some of the young guys play. So I think this will be a crucial year. Obviously, I think this upcoming year is going to be one of the best years in college basketball. Obviously, women's college basketball has been doing their thing. A lot of, great ratings. Talk about that later on in the day. But just with the star power, like we feel like that's lacked a little bit in college basketball. But I think this upcoming year, it's going to be great. I think you guys got star power. Auburn has star power. Duke has star power. Like I think it's just going to be so great to kind of see some of these teams with all these recruits coming in and these high-level players.
For sure. Yeah, the recruits coming in, the names jump off the charts. You got Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper. Those are just the top three, and will be some of the best players you see in the sport next year. But I mean, yeah, it's just a great time to be a college basketball fan, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's in a good place. I think we've struggled a little bit over the years, but I think it's in a good spot.
Definitely. I think it's starting to get back to where you have like your players that you love and I believe Cooper Flagg will become a villain in college basketball next year. And I believe that's what the sport has been missing in times, is just someone to go back on like, he's really good. Like Edey, I feel like kind of took that role just a little bit. No hate against Zach Edey whatsoever. He was phenomenal last night. But I believe when someone has that role of like the villain, I believe more people are keeping up with the game and following it along.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we have not had that in a while. Obviously, you had Christian lately. The most recent example would be Grayson Allen from Duke, but it's been a long time. And like you said, that brings the kind of pizzazz, like, I got to tune into this game type of thing.
Exactly.
Oh, come on, everyone loves Duke. Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't mind Duke. I don't
let's
have a problem
be
with
honest.
Duke, but yeah,
they fulfill that villain role very well.
Yes,
especially in basketball. You were talking about the formula being such a key to your success. Losing pieces would be tough, but how would you describe this formula? Because it's very obvious what UConn's able to do well, but replicating this success, is it just the shooting, the pace? What was the formula this year?
Well, for Alabama, I believe it was the shooting and just the fast pace. Also, the depth didn't hurt as well. Having guys come off the bench like Sam Walters, Davin Cosby, also making an impact. But yeah, it's just like how you said, Craig. The tempo was huge for Alabama. I think they were one of the fastest teams in the country in terms of playing pace. And then they like to get their shots up quick. And you saw it with Sears and Estrada and Nelson. Everyone would be getting their shots in, and hopefully they would go in most of the time. But I do also believe that in this day and age, and Klingon kind of proved it last night, is that you do need a big. You do need not a traditional 7-footer, but someone who's going to command the paint, get the rebounds, crash the glass, someone who's going to be the anchor on your defense for sure.
That's kind of been lost too, Craig, when you think about it.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah, that's not – everybody's now like you got to be able to shoot from three. I mean –
yeah, so do you see that working? Like, let's say next year's team, maybe you're guard heavy, you have one big guy. Let's say you got two bigs. Do you feel like the formula can work not necessarily with the exact same five on the court? It's more so just the shooting and the tempo they're going to use in the offseason to train and be able to overwhelm teams with that?
I believe it can. I believe I can, especially because Alabama was kind of just like an example of that this season. They didn't have the dominant big in the post who was going to collect all the boards and open up the transition. But they had guys fill in when they needed to. And I believe with the fast tempo and the offense that they had, it's just a matter of playing catch up for everybody else. And you got to keep up with them at some point. And while their defense needed a little work at times, they proved it in the end or at least in the UNC game and the Clemson game, made the plays when it mattered.
And describe what you saw this year with the team chemistry, maybe how it compares to previous seasons.
Well, I think the team before this year's team was a big part of that as well, just because we brought in guys like it was Sears' first year, it was Rylan Griffin's first year, Pringle's first year, and then having those guys come back and really create some continuity within the team, even though they lost guys like Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney and Charles Bediako, having some guys like that who know the culture and know the program really was probably huge for Alabama this season.
Interesting. And then this year, let's say you lose Sears or you lose some of these key pieces. Do you feel like guys are going to go into the situation in Alabama and try to fulfill that same role? Or do you see next year just trying to evaluate the talent you guys have, take some losses, and then try to just maximize what you guys got?
I trust in Oats to maximize what cards he's dealt. And I feel like what he's got at the moment is not too bad with 2 5-star All-American McDonald's All-Americans and having Naz Cunningham also be in that picture, and then hopefully getting some guys to stay as well. I feel like he'll work the best with what he has, but also try to replicate what happened this year as well.
Interesting. And then what do you see just this year with the Alabama fan base? Obviously, support's been really high, but just what did this run, you think, mean to Alabama basketball as a program?
It was huge. I mean, Alabama fans have experienced success in football for years. For the past 2 decades, I would say they've been, or at least a little under 2 decades, I would say they've been accustomed to success in football. But this was just so different. It was just such a different vibe. They've never had to deal with the Final Four or the parameters of that, and it was just something that everyone bought into, and everyone was excited to be around, and everyone bought into the team when it was time. And yeah, it was just a great feeling all around.
Yep. And then what was your favorite highlight of this year's season?
Ooh, favorite highlight of this year's season. It could have been Sears exploding against Clemson towards the end and his step back three that could have been it. Grant Nelson's dunk on Klingon also is probably up there, but I would give Sears the edge just because that game sent us to the Final Four.
Yep, he had quite a tournament. Then you were talking about the UConn. Who do you feel like was the MVP for you guys this year in just overall throughout the season?
I mean, it's hard to say anyone else besides Mark Sears. I mean, I believe he averaged a little over 23 points in the tournament. I think he had a 30-point game as well in there. It was just hard to not say it was Mark Sears just because he made the shots when it matters. He distributed the ball when it matters. He made incredible passes and incredible plays, play after play, that just left Alabama fans in awe from time to time. And yeah, it would just be hard to say anybody else besides Sears. For sure.
Interesting. You got anything, Najee?
Nah, that's it for me. I thought it was a great year. Shout out to UConn and their dominance. I was really impressed with I'm gonna be honest with Alabama and what they were able to do and the fight they gave them. I think you guys got a lot to build on. And I think, like you said, Coach Nate Oats is the guy for the job. But yeah, shout out to UConn. I mean, doing it second year in a row and retooling. Like, I think it was more impressive than what Florida did because Florida basically brought back the whole roster. UConn lost 5 guys, 3 to the NBA, and had to retool and get different pieces, get Kim Spencer, bring in a high recruit in Stephon Castle, and, a guy that came in and was ready to play. So shout out to Coach Dan Hurley and the Huskies.
For sure. It's crazy that we're living in a day and age where an Alabama coach is refusing the Kentucky job. It's nuts. That's where we are.
Yeah, you're right about that. That's where we are. But we'll transition real quick to football.
Sure.
Just what are your thoughts? Kind of update us because I obviously know off the top of my head, Max. But when is Alabama's spring game?
This Saturday.
Okay, is this Saturday as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about it. Who are some guys you're excited to kind of see get on the gridiron and officially put on that Crimson Tide jersey?
I'm excited for it just to be back, just like the feeling of spring ball is back in the air and got the spring game coming up. But yeah, just some guys I'm excited to see. Top of my head, I know we've been saying his name a lot. Caleb Odom's going to be something. I'm going to keep saying it until I see him on the field. It's going to be fun to see where he plays and where he lines up. Jaleel Hurley, who was a 4-star in the 2023 class, said Caleb Odom can play. Not going to lie, that boy can actually play. And there's been a couple quotes about him this week just saying what he's been doing on offense, what he brings to that offense, just something different. It's just a new feeling. But also going along with him, I would say Jeremy Bernard as well. Just someone new on that receiving core on the outside. Just adds another speed, another threat of speed to the offense.
No doubt about it. Those are going to be interesting to see. Just far as obviously we talked about wide receivers, but how do you feel about just defensive line potentially where that can land for you guys, and what are some prospects there you excited to kind of see?
So in the draft, they're losing a Boygby, who was a huge contributor this past season, but they're keeping guys such as Tim Keenan, who was a monster in the middle. Jaheim Otis. They have Damon Payne Jr. They have, Tim Smith on the inside as well. They mostly retained a lot of guys on there, and then they're moving in. I don't know. Remember, Keon Keeley was a 5-star 2 years ago, I believe, and didn't get. I don't think he saw the field last year, but I think he's been moving around on that D line a couple of different positions. So I'm excited to see him as well.
No doubt about it. So do you, Craig?
What do you think about Alabama's secondary this season? Who's going to be kind of the tone setter back there in the passing game?
Well, I believe Malachi Moore will probably be him. Malachi Moore will probably be the leader of the defense, I believe, at least the secondary, just because of his pure experience. And he is going to have the role of leading all these new young guys, such as Jalen Mbakwe and Zay Mitzi and Xavier Brown. who are also very talented, but it's going to be maybe a little challenge at first just to get them settled in and playing into the next level. But I believe in definitely Malachi will lead them, but I believe in them to pick it up when they're going to have to. There's a lot of talent out there for sure.
Yeah, it looks like there's enough depth in that secondary. If teams want to go with tons of receivers, trip sets, you guys can bring out multiple guys with that experience. But what do you think about this year's linebacking core? Guys that can really bring back that typical Alabama defense that is just physical, knocking the ball out, creating the big play.
For sure. It starts the linebacking core definitely starts with Deontay Lawson. That's the man in the middle, and he's going to be one calling plays and for the defense. And for him to come back this season was huge just to have another familiar face on that defense. Him and Jahad Campbell will be massive for Alabama in the middle. And then they're losing edge rush. They're losing Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell to the draft, but then replacing them with Quandarius Robinson, and then maybe Keon Keeley can get some snaps out there as well. There's been a lot of talk of Keanu Coate has been making a huge impact early on for Alabama, throughout the spring at least. So it'll be exciting to see him on A-Day just to see where they line him up.
And then offensively, who do you feel like is the most explosive guy for you guys offensively?
Explosive? That's a good question. There's a couple guys. I know he's not going to play this weekend, but I believe Ryan Williams would be up there. And I believe the running backs too with Justice Haynes. I feel like they need to get him the ball he needs to have the ball a good amount of times for us to be successful this season, just because I feel like he's too talented to not have the ball in his hands. Him and Jamarian Miller should be a good 1-2 punch in the backfield as well.
Interesting. And then, so this is going to be 3 p.m. It looks like this weekend. What do you expect? We've seen some 45,000, 50,000 fans in some of these. Do you think Alabama is going to try to really usher in a new era? Are we going to see them attract one of the bigger crowds of any spring game this year?
I believe so. And this is just me trying to be unbiased here, but I also think it should be one of the more interesting spring games, just to see DeBoer finally on the sidelines and just to see what that's going to look like. And Alabama fans have been itching for that ever since January when Saban retired. But yeah, it'll just be, I think they'll show out for him. I think they'll show up in numbers, and I think it'll be an exciting day in Tuscaloosa for sure. Start of a new era.
Exactly. And then outside of Caleb Odom doing his thing, impressing his teammates, coaches, what else have you heard just in spring practice leading up to this? Maybe some of the guys that have stood out.
Sure. Well, the last scrimmage they had, Ty Simpson had 3 total touchdowns, and I believe 2 of them were throwing and 1 on the ground. And what you said, just on the offense?
No, just any side of the ball, any standouts this spring that have gathered headlines.
Yeah, so then there was the 3 freshman corners, Mbakwe, Mincy, and Brown have all made their plays, and it's been on Twitter a couple of times. But then besides them, Red Morgan also in the back end, he's going to be a name to know come fall, just because of how I've heard his name a couple of times, just to see that he's been making plays all over the defense and been getting runs with the number 1s on defense as well. So just be interesting to see where they all end up lining up in the end.
And then how do you feel about this year's offensive line?
I would say stronger than last year. Had a lot of hype behind it, just behind with Proctor and the returners that we had. But this year I'm excited for it. I know there's a couple question marks on the tackles, just on who will be, what personnel will be there. But in terms of the interior offensive line, with Brailsford, who was back at practice this week after missing some time, and then Tyler Booker and Jaden Roberts, should be one of the best interior offensive lines in the country.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think for me, a couple more, I'll let you go, Max. Okay, so we talked about Bama. So we talked about kind of the expectation and kind of going in. What do you feel like? Obviously, it's just spring ball, but what do you feel like would be a successful spring game for Alabama Crimson Tide?
I feel like you let DeBoer show what he can do. You let him show the playbook with him and Sheridan and Jamarcus Shepard. I feel like there have been a couple of things this week saying how it's just a different playbook, and it's trying to adapt more to what the personnel they have on hand. So trying to make sure Milroe's comfortable in the new offense. I feel like let him sling it deep, let him show off his arm strength a little, but just show that it's a new era and show that it's a new offense and show that the coaching staff has finally made their impression on the program as well.
No doubt about it. And then last one, I'll let you go. Obviously talked about defense and things like that. Who do you think, you talked about some of the players in the secondary, obviously going to have to come in young. Who do you think, if you had to project this season, who could be a big impact player that might be kind of a sleeper no one's talking about? What would your answer be to that on defense?
Good question. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call him I like the D-line in general is something I'm very excited to see again. Just with Tim Keenan, and then they got the transfer from Texas A&M, LT Overton, who should be making some headlines soon. And then with Tim Keenan, LT, and then Jaheim Otis, should be very exciting to see on the D-line.
No doubt. You got any more, Craig?
No, that's it. And as I said, Overton would not have transferred if he wasn't going to play a big impact. I mean, he had everything going.
I feel like he will be, if not starting, he'll have a lot of plays coming in the fall. Yeah, for sure.
No doubt about it. Well, Max, we appreciate you as always. Obviously, next week will be a big week for our show. We'll all be reacting to big-time spring games, Georgia, Bama, so that'll be a lot of fun. Appreciate you as always, man. Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me.
All right, guys. So there goes Max. So we got a couple more topics before we wrap up the show. We'll go ahead and go talk about the Clemson game. We touched on it a little bit. You were asking Hayden about it, Craig. But what were you most just impressed about in the spring game? I know you mentioned your defense, but what kind of stood out to you?
So it was definitely the defense. And here's the thing. We were talking about the Snead trade with the Chiefs and what's the value of a veteran in the secondary. I think what these Clemson guys are showing, you can be a freshman and you can come in and you can earn playing time in the secondary. You can battle for position. You can lose guys and still bring in quality guys that have experience and they can do their thing. Thought the defense played great. They obviously had a ton of big turnovers, ton of sacks, pressure. Sammy Brown led them in tackles. No surprise there. But, yeah, I thought the secondary looked good. Avian Terrell played phenomenal. And as good as they played, it also looked like there was some issues just with the timing between the quarterbacks and the receivers. They did make some plays, but it looks like they were struggling to get open. But I thought the defense definitely was a little further ahead than the offense for Clemson. But it was an exciting game nonetheless. And anytime you see your new recruits coming in and making big plays, that's something, even if it doesn't impact you this season, you got to be happy about that.
Yeah, no doubt, Craig. I mean, I 100% agree with you. The defense was on the next level. Obviously, with some of the sacks and some of the stats you have to take with a grain of salt. But I like what's the Stephon Green. We got to see him when he was younger, played for Rome, what he's going to mean for that defense, Craig. I think he's going to be a big-time player for them, probably the best one they've had since probably Christian Wilkins, who's at Miami now, just got that massive deal. My bad, not at Miami. Just signed with the Raiders, got that massive deal from them. I think he could be on par to have that kind of a year for them. And I love what he can bring to the team. And then back to your point about the secondary, as you said, I think if you're a DB, what better spot do you want to go to than besides maybe Clemson? Like you said, the reality of playing early, and they're projecting Avian Terrell to be the number one corner for their defense this upcoming year. So what better place would you want to go? They still got Shelton Lewis from Stockbridge formerly, who's going to have a lot of playing time, Khalil Barnes or Northrop Coney. So, I mean, if you're a DB, what other place would you want to go? So I think they're doing a good job. The thing that worries me, though, Craig, I mean, obviously, I had A.J. Hoffler. He was impressive on defense. Jamal Anderson, he had a pick six and bought the Dirty Bird dance formerly of his dad. Liked it as well. What worries me is their offense. It's like, I think they got a really good running game. Got David Osayiemi, who's going to be in there, see what kind of playing time he can get. But Phil Maffa returns. But the quarterback, like Clay Klubnik, should be on another level right now. We should be talking about with him as a top quarterback in the NCAA right now. But we're not having that conversation. It's incredibly average. We're talking about a walk-on, Trent Perryman, having a better showing than he did. Now, I get it. It takes time, Craig. But we got to be able to take that next step. And that's why I think Clemson's hurting right now. Now, he still has time. Right, it's just early returns, but you got to take that next step forward, in my humble opinion. But I was also impressed, and I'll throw it back to you, Brian Wesco. He looked very impressive for them and his ability at receiver and what he can bring to the table. So I feel like in the last few years, Craig, we've been having this debate on the show. Do they have a receiver that could be what they used to have, right, with the D-Hop, with a T. Higgins? I think they got that at Wesco, but they need better quarterback play.
Absolutely. quarterbacks were under pressure the entire time. He balled out, but overall the timing was there. But here's the other thing. It's like when you're a quarterback, it's what I liked about Hecklinski. He did not have the best game in the state championship, but anytime he was in these 7-on-7s, anytime he was on the field, if there was pressure, he'd rarely take a sack. He'd just get it out. They took 9 sacks in this game. That's not going to get it done. If you're under pressure, you have to be quick enough to know where your check down is. And then that will alleviate some of the pressure. But once that pressure starts coming, you can't sit back there and take these sacks. You can't scramble around.
No.
And the offense has to have an identity. It can't just have one guy that's doing his thing. Are you a team that is balanced? Who's your tight end? Who's running? It's like they have a lot of position battles heading into that first week, and it's going to be a tough opponent with Georgia. And I'm just saying, like, the offensive line, everything I feel like just needs to start clicking. And I mean, offense killed them last year too.
Yeah, they did. And I think Georgia's going to be a good test for them early. I mean, even if they get smacked around, you see games like that being kind of the catalyst for teams in order to figure it out. So we're going to see still a lot of time to work the kinks out, but obviously some concern offensively, but defensively, they're going to be the real deal.
Yep. And I can't remember what was the game where they finally clicked last year. But the reason they won and played so well, they had 0 penalties. They finally had a great offensive game. This offense is – who was it?
I'll say Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, that game, I thought they started
so
cooking.
It's like they're going to have to play mistake-free. That's why they won that game. Well, what happened in the spring game? Taking every look, it's a 3rd and 16. Does not have to be a clean offense and disciplined, and they've got to figure it out soon.
Yes, they do. And we'll leave it there. We got one more spring game we want to talk about. Auburn Tigers. I not want to hear this, but Cam Coleman dazzles in the spring game. I mean, man, Craig, I'll tell you what, that receiving corps that they got, I mean, he had 4 catches, 92 yards. Also, he had, make sure I got my notes right, 34-yard touchdown catch. He just kind of jumps off the page. You know, you just want to get him the football and let him do his thing. Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, and Perry Thompson. Simmons had an outstanding year this past year for Benjamin Russell. So to come in, not there yet, still in school, but should be there in the fall. And Perry Thompson. I mean, when you have that kind of receiving core, I know they're all freshmen, Craig, but when you got guys you could just get the ball to, they're going to make you look good as a quarterback. You got to feel good. So offensively, I think Auburn's going to be a unit. I think they're going to take a big step forward, and I think they're going to have fans just in awe. The question is, can their defense get better? But offensively, you got to feel good with those 3 guys coming in and what Cam Coleman showed in that spring game.
100%. Cam Coleman had 18 touchdowns as a senior last year. And if you watch his touchdown in the spring game, that is what I call just cat reflex touchdown. He didn't go up and get it. The defender's right on him, but he adjusted to the ball, reaches down, grabs it, doesn't overreact, doesn't try to push, doesn't try to get in a fight. He just knows where the ball is, reaches out, hauls it in, backs his way into the end zone. Insane level of just hand-eye coordination, confidence, natural ability. He's got that reflex. He's got that catching ability where he just makes it look easy. He makes difficult catches look routine. Throw him the ball.
Who have you? I just remember you saying that quote before. Who
said that
said
about Dylan Williams, where you just
throw
it out to him, and it's just like, how the heck did he catch that? Because some guys, they're 50-50 balls. Other guys, it's like they're so good at catching in traffic. And it's because, like, if you got that defender on you and you can just make that adjustment, you don't have to necessarily go over them the entire time. Maybe the DB's not looking. You can stick with them and then at the last second snag it. But that takes such quick reaction time, and he has it. I mean, that catch he has, if anyone hasn't seen it, just look at it. Who do you see doing that? That's not something you can coach. That's just a guy that knows where the ball is, fights for it every single time, and can make plays when you throw it his way.
No, exactly. I mean,
they're going to be a beast.
Yes, he is. They're going to be entertaining to watch. So that's our thoughts on their spring game. They're going to be a fun team, and they got some dudes, man. I think Auburn's going to put a lot of people on notice, and they're going to make that SEC interesting this year. I think they can take a step forward. It's all going to depend on their quarterback play, and then the defense can get better, but they're going to have the weapons in the run game and that receiver to make some noise.
Yeah, I think they're going to have some 300, 400-yard games through the air. think Coleman's capable of going off. I think all those guys are.
No doubt. So they're gonna be fun.
Yeah. Big plays for Auburn this year, for sure.
No doubt. But all right, guys, we'll leave that there. We're about to conclude the show. Last segment, the NFL. Get real quick into some names right before the draft, some top prospects. But let's talk about one of the big ones. T'Vondre Sweat officially arrested for DWI, driving while intoxicated. I'll start this one, Craig. I think that's a yikes. A guy that came in and, obviously talked a lot of noise, obviously, in the combine, didn't perform up to snuff. And then you kind of add insult to injury with obviously the arrest. I think it's not a good sign. Obviously, still be teams that are going to pick him up. I know he's visited Tennessee here recently.
Seahawks, I think, this week too.
Seahawks this week too. Great point about you, Craig. But yeah, I don't think it's a good look. Obviously, your biggest day is about to happen, Craig. Like, you got a couple weeks to the draft. Like, I understand sometimes you want to just, get a little reprieve, but just be smart about it. Like, sometimes with the athletes, like, bro, just be smart. Like, we can go for a drink. Like, just get an Uber. You have a friend take you. Like, whatever it is, I get it. But just be smart. Like, you just don't need this 2 weeks, 3 weeks right before the draft when your biggest day and you're trying to get the money that you're trying to deserve and all the hard work that you put in. Don't blow it away,
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to make light of it, but it's like, how much alcohol did it take? There's a big guy.
It's a good point.
It's not just, I feel like it took more than 1 or 2 drinks to be over the limit.
Yeah.
Another thing, it's like, well, I guess the good news is we've seen some of these where it's like a player before the draft and it's like a Sunday morning at like 7 a.m. It's like, okay, this guy clearly has a problem.
Yeah.
I feel like it is a yikes. It is a bad look, but hey, the team that he goes to, they know this happened. They're going to talk to him. They're going to say, we still believe in you. And he has an opportunity to turn the page. It's not completely disastrous. It's a wake-up call. It's embarrassing. You mentioned the combine. He was the face of the combine heading into it. So this hasn't been a good lead-up at all.
No.
But hopefully you can focus it. And it's just like with his individual position, he is a big impact player. But it's like he still had to prove that he's a 3-down defensive player. He's not just a nose tackle. He's a guy that can be on the field all the time. He's got to convince these teams that he's really bought in.
Yeah, he is definitely going to have to convince him. And obviously, good thing is, like you said, Craig, he's going to be able to prove himself. So he's going to have to, show some different things and show some better qualities, obviously. And, I think it's going to be an important mini camp for him, rookie mini camp, Craig. Obviously, that starts off in May, and then obviously an important training camp as well. But if he's able to come on the field and show what he's able to do, when the fall comes, they could be just fine. But just got to be smart with your decisions.
Yeah, and I guess I was wrong. It was at 4:41 a.m. So,
oh wow,
that's bad. And people say, why does that matter? It's bad no matter what. And it's like, I get your point, but we all know the saying. Like, if you're up at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, you're up to no good. That's just the way it is, especially if you're trying to be a professional athlete.
That's a good point.
Yeah, there's not even anything open.
No, bars closed by. That's yeah.
Get some sleep.
Yeah, it's a good point.
4:41 after a crash. So yeah, that's really. I hadn't seen that detail. I thought I was giving him the benefit of the doubt. I thought it happened, like a 10 p.m. situation. 4:41. Yeah, don't be out at 4:41 in any circumstance.
Yeah, just what are you doing? Unless you're gonna go work out in the morning and train.
Exactly.
That's the only way,
That's crazy.
Yeah, just not smart. But we'll leave that there. We'll get into debating the top wide receiver prospect. I'm hearing some rumblings, Craig, that it could be a guy that's taken over Marvin Harrison Jr. potentially. It could be Malik Neighbors. But who do you think is the top wide receiver prospect? How would you just rank some of these guys?
He's already got the name. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. Here's why. He's the real deal. Every single time he's on the field, he can get behind the safety. He can make the difficult catches. He's precise with his route running. He's one of the best I've ever seen do it. He can catch with contact. I just think his routes are exceptional. And it's like, yeah, some guy might have a slight advantage in speed. Some guy might be flashier in this way. He's the most complete. I think he's just set up to dominate at the professional level.
Yeah, Craig, I'll take you back to a couple years ago when it was not obviously this draft, but the year prior, right? When CJ Stroud and Bryce Young were top of the class. People were saying, like, if he was draft eligible, he would have been taken number one. So, I mean, that goes to show you how good he is. And I don't think he's done nothing wrong. I just think, like, some teams have concern because he didn't, go to the NFL Combine, didn't work out his pro day. But he probably has good cause to pause, good reason. He's like, well, I proved everything on the field. I showed you that I was the best player on the field whenever I played. So what else do I need to prove? So some guys feel like that, and I feel like he has the pedigree, he has the accolades, he has the potential to be, like you said, probably one of the greatest prospects potentially at the receiver position. So I don't think there's a debate. I think it's him, and I think if gosh, I lost the name. If you're the Arizona Cardinals, you got to feel good because potentially he might fall to you at 4 because Caleb Williams will probably go 1. Then you got 2 more quarterbacks, Drake May, and then obviously Jaden Daniels. You got to feel good, and then you pair him with obviously Kyler Murray. You feel pretty good that you got a guy that can come in and contribute early, and you pair that with a couple guys that got in free agency. You feel pretty good.
Yeah, I just like the way he catches the ball. Even all those outside variables, I just don't see how you could pass up on him or talk yourself out of it. I don't see enough there. I think he's the best. I think he's proven it,
Yeah.
and I would definitely take him first.
No doubt. For me, I'm gonna go 2. I'm gonna go Malik Neighbors, and then 3 Lab McConkey. I know it's gonna surprise a lot of people. See, everybody else has Brian Thomas up there, Roma Dunze, A.D. Mitchell, obviously Xavier Worthy. But I'm talking about impact, Craig. I'm talking about guys that I think potentially have a better, longer career. I just think Lab McConkey could easily be a 10-year vet out of that slot, out of that position that he plays. I think Malik Neighbors, same thing. I think over the course of their careers, those 3, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Lab McConkey, I would bet my money that they have longer, more sustainable careers and that they are kind of the guys that end up making the Hall of Fame out of this class is coming in.
How many of these guys do you see going in the first round? Would you set the over-under at 3.5?
Oh, over.
You think more than?
Yes. 3.5. No. Way more. I thought you were going to say 6. I'd be like 6, probably right around that number.
Mitchell's going in the first round, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. You have Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., probably Brian Thomas. I think Ladd is going to end up falling to fucking Kansas City or
how many
Xavier Worthy.
How many receivers went in the first round last year? Let's see. Ooh, last year was different. So after 19 picks of the 2023 NFL draft, not one wide receiver had been selected. Jackson Smith was the first at 20, and then So you think this year's going to be the opposite?
For sure. I think it's more loaded. I mean, I think there's a lot of – this is the – if you go talk to any NFL analyst, you go talk to any scout guy, any GM, any scouting department, this is the deepest wide receiver class we've had in a while. So I'd easily think there are going to be so many people taking receivers that may not even need receivers.
Interesting. And so you do think Ladd's going to be a first rounder?
I do. I know he's projected late first round, like early second, but I think Ladd's going to be a first rounder. I think it's going to be a team that's way down there. I think either you guys will take him or it'll be probably a surprise team. Ladd can come and contribute early. I mean, yes.
Then how high do you think Marvin's going to go?
I'm going to go 4. I don't think the Patriots they still need a quarterback. I don't think the Patriots take him. I don't think Washington takes him. I don't think Chicago at 1 takes him. I think he goes 4. Arizona. Perfect landing spot.
We'll see. But yeah.
We'll see. Yep.
So yeah, interesting how last year the receivers did not get much love, but it looks like this year could change that.
Yep. And we'll obviously have coverage, and we'll talk about that with you guys later on. Obviously, when the draft happens, we'll react to some of the biggest storylines and trades. But to close off the show, Craig, we got to react. We talked about it off air, but Stephon Diggs, the Blockbuster trade, I think this was on Wednesday, so we weren't able to react to it instantly, but officially traded to the Houston Texans. How do you think it changes things for the Bills, and does it make Houston Super Bowl contenders?
I think it's going to – I think it did kind of shock the locker room for the Bills. I don't think some of his teammates saw it coming. Think it's very tough for them to find a replacement who's going to be on his level right away. So talk about the window closing and opening for certain teams. They didn't get a replacement back. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, if I had to say Craig, I think I'm going to say, yeah, I think it puts him in that conversation. A lot of people have obviously KC, then Baltimore, then them. But I think it puts pressure on CJ too, because you got a guy coming in. They obviously wiped off a little bit of his contract. He'll be a free agent after this year. And Stephon Diggs, who is looking to get another contract and prove some things. But we've seen him be kind of, once he kind of wants to leave, he tries to, get his way out of places. So I mean, I still think he's a great talent, great player. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what they're able to do this year. Obviously, lost to Baltimore in the divisional round, but I know they have aspirations of going deeper this year. But I think it puts pressure on CJ to see, what he can do. He's already great before him. What will they be this year with Tank Dell coming back off that injury, still having some of those pieces, Dalton Schultz coming back? How will they look? And I think for the Bills, put you in kind of a rebuild to a degree. Obviously, with Josh Allen going to always be a contender. A lot of people consider him a top 5 quarterback. But I think you put more onus and pressure on him because now you're going to have to win with a lesser receiver. We see Mahomes do it, but Mahomes is a different breed, So it's going to be interesting to see what Josh is able to do this year without having that same talent. And probably and that's why I think there's going to be more players drafted. Like the Bills needed the number 1 receiver, so they're going to take a guy. But yeah, I think it puts more pressure on Josh, and I think that AFC East is the Jets' division to lose, and I think it's going to make it tough for them to get back. And I think they kind of missed out on their window for the Bills.
And what's this we're hearing? So Diggs landing with the Texans, is that completely set?
Yeah, that's set.
Okay.
Yeah, that's over with.
Yeah, so
What are they talking about then?
Yeah.
But so how good do you think the Texans will be with him?
I think they'll be real good. My thing is, though, with him, he's going to have to be able to, I think he'll be the number 1, but will he get upset if he's not getting 7 to 8 targets a game? But I think they're the class of the AFC South, Craig, in my opinion. I think they're better than Indianapolis. They're going to be better than Jacksonville. And they're going to be better than, Tennessee. Tennessee will be more competitive this year, but I think they're clear-cut the best team in the AFC South. And then I think they're going to be right in that contender conversation with him. But he's just going to have to be okay with not always getting all the targets and sharing some of the load with the Tank Dell and those other guys.
And then last point, do you view this trade more as the Bills are running thin of patience with Stephon Diggs and just getting rid of him, or do you see the Texans jumping on the opportunity?
I think it's both. If I had to say, I think for the Bills, they just ran thin. Think about this, Craig. They decided to eat $31 million in cap space to send him there.
Yeah.
So I think for them, it just is like, man, we've had enough. We've tried. We tried to repair this relationship, but obviously you're not happy, so we're just going to move on. So I think it was a lot of that, Craig, unfortunately. And I think for the Texans, it's like, okay, let's jump on it. We got Daniil Hunter. We got Joe Mixon from the Bengals, and now we add another piece to our offense for our young quarterback. I think the Texans are all in with DeMeco Ryans, and they see the potential that they can win a championship in this window with C.J. Stroud on a rookie deal.
Yeah, well, and the bright side is he won't have to be playing in 0 degrees.
That is true.
Like, seriously, I don't know how those players do it. If I got drafted to Buffalo, I would demand a trade immediately.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it either, but like you said, playing one more of the state right next to his brother, not too far. Dallas and Houston's like 2 hours away, so he got to feel pretty good about that. But that's our thoughts, guys. That's all we got for today. Hope you enjoyed the show, and always stay tuned for Underrated Overlook next week at noon Eastern. Craig will be back with his show at 12 tomorrow, and I'll be back at 4 with the girls' show. That's all we got. See you later.